We are still technically in week number 5 because we have the Bills and the Titans going tonight. So I guess we're kind of like the pregame show for Bills Titans. Why not? Let's run with that and get you set for your waiver wire claims as you watch Bills Titans later on. This is the waiver wire Q&A. This is on the FanDuel Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope pages as we get you set for your week 6 run of waivers for your season-long teams. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by JJ Zachariason. He is editor-in-chief of numberFire and FanDuel. And JJ, Tuesday football for the first time since the Metrodome roof collapsed. How you doing?
I'm good. I don't know if I like it or not. The reason why I don't like it most is that I can't just update all my spreadsheets today, just all because I have to redo it again then tomorrow after the Bills play. But I do like more football at night, so that's good. But it'll be interesting. It'll be a good test.
It was a tough dilemma for me to decide. Do I pull my running back numbers now, or do I just wait until tomorrow? And I'm a very impatient person, and I like getting data. So I was kind of itchy to do it, but I decided not to. So I guess tomorrow will be my fun data day. I get, your footy pajamas, you're all excited to pull some data. I decided to pull off till tomorrow. So we get a little bit extra excitement on a Wednesday, but still a little bit weird for today. But thankfully, we do kind of have an idea of what waivers should look like for today. We're going to talk about those waivers and answer your questions here in just 1 second. But as always, if you want to get questions in, you can ask us no matter where you are watching this event. If you're watching on YouTube, put them in the YouTube chat. We'll answer questions from there. You can put them on Facebook, also on Twitch, and we'll get you as many questions as we can throughout the day for today. Also, we're giving away a free ticket into this week's Sunday Million contest over on FanDuel. What you do if you want to get yourself entered for a shot at a free entry into the FanDuel Sunday Million, go to the description over on YouTube.com. There is a link in there. All you do is go to the link, enter your email. We'll have a drawing later this week to decide who will get that free ticket. I believe that drawing will be on Friday, probably to be announced on Saturday. So if you want a free ticket into the FanDuel Sunday Million, make sure you go to the YouTube link here and check out the description and get yourself entered. First question comes from Francis. A redraft tournament. I lost Dak. I have Tannehill and half of their FOB left. How much do they spend on Dalton? I don't know if FFPC is a 2-quarterback or super flex league, but sounds like it may be based on the way this question is worded. If you lost Dak, how much of your fab would you spend on Andy Dalton?
In a super flex league, you're going to want to spend a good chunk. And by good chunk, I mean upwards of 70%, 80%. In a single quarterback league, a deep one, which this could easily be too, in a deeper league where, people are rostering second quarterbacks, you should probably, you likely only have to go up to the 20% mark, if that. I mean, the reason why it's that high even in that type of format is because obviously there's not as good of a waiver wire in general because rosters are larger. But yeah, I mean, I think that around that range kind of makes sense. But, in most leagues, people listening to this right now, in most leagues, you're not going to need to add Andy Dalton more than likely. But I do think that he's a good streamer this week. I think he's a good streamer potentially the next 3 weeks because they have 3+ matchups. I like him this week though against Arizona. I think that he's in a good enough spot to be a streamer along with guys like, Kirk Cousins is one, Ryan Fitzpatrick's another one. And then Tannehill, who was mentioned in this question, is also in a good spot too.
As someone who started Joe Flacco in a Superflex dynasty this past week, I will be bidding on Andy Dalton. You can believe that for sure. Dan is asking, is Austin Hooper a tight end one the rest of the way? Hooper got some volume finally on Sunday, and you kind of predicted that would happen. So are you buying into Hooper, or is that just kind of a 1-week blip to you?
No, I mean, he's been seeing a nice chunk or a nice uptick in target share since about week 1. He had a 5.7% target share in week 1. And basically since then, he's been a lot more involved in that offense. And the one big thing, too, with Cleveland is that the offense is clicking a lot more than it was in that week 1 game against Baltimore. Tough matchup. They just looked really bad. But, I'm a little bit more bullish than I was back then on this Baltimore or in this Cleveland offense. And, it's going to take some time to get acclimated to a new system, a new coach. And it looks like Austin Hooper will be, and he looks like a lower end tight end one from here on out, which might not be saying that much because the tight end position is so bad. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be a weekly plug and play starter, I think.
Yeah, and that Browns offense, like you said, playing pretty efficiently. They are not passing a ton, but they're passing the ball pretty well when they do, which is a credit to Kevin Stefanski and his schemes there. Dan also was asking about defensive streamers. The Giants are available. Washington is available. It's going to be a great game. Tennessee is available, facing Houston, and then Miami facing the Jets. So between the Giants, Washington, Tennessee, and Miami, any leans for you, JJ, for defensive streamers this week?
I think the Giants are kind of safe, actually. They don't have the best defense in the best team situation. The defense is actually playing better than expected, I would say, so far this year. They actually rank in the top half of the league in pressure rate. And then Washington ranks dead last in sack rate allowed. Yes, that's with Dwayne Haskins, but the offensive line obviously has not performed all that well. So whoever's under center for them in this week 6 game, I think that, the Giants defense works and is a good streamer. I can understand Tennessee's too, because Deshaun Watson gets sacked so much. But I think the Giants are probably the safest option of that group.
We also don't really know what the Tennessee defense will look like due to the COVID positives they've had. So that's kind of a risk there for them as well. Joey is saying, hey, JJ, my quarterback 1 is Kyler, and the only waiver options for quarterback 2 are Foles, Rivers, and of course, Dalton. Joey, I can't tell if this is a super flex league, which would change this question quite a bit. The whole league, he says, is ready to spend anything on Dalton. How much would you be willing to spend? So I guess the context here is that guys like Nick Foles and Phillip Rivers are still on waivers. I feel like that would push me towards not putting that much on Andy Dalton personally, knowing that there are at least somewhat viable alternatives on the wire. If you have guys like Foles and Rivers out there, what would you be putting from a free agent budget perspective on Andy Dalton?
Yeah, maybe like a 10%, if that. But, if your league is hoarding quarterbacks, I'm going to be much more inclined to get a bench wide receiver or running back and just trade away one of those players for that quarterback. Because let's say it's a 12-team league and each team is holding 2 quarterbacks. That means that and you're only holding 1. That means that there's 9 more quarterbacks that are available in free agency, assuming you're only holding 1 of them. And so in this case, it sounds like some teams are holding 3 quarterbacks, which means that you should be able to trade. If it's a single quarterback league, you can trade away some of those bench players for those quarterbacks. That's why I'm not really going to go crazy spending on Andy Dalton. But again, just to reiterate, I do think Dalton is a good streamer this week. I think that he could be very usable the next 3 weeks. It's going to be hard for a quarterback, let alone probably the best backup in the league. But it's going to be difficult for a quarterback to not do something with the weapons that are in Dallas.
Best backup in the league until Marcus Mariota comes off IR, you mean?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, good. Just had to make sure there. Joey did clarify it's a 2 quarterback league, but I think with those alternatives out there like Foles and Rivers, that does lower the need to blow a lot of your budget on Dalton there still.
Yeah, I would still. I mean, it would be more than 10% if it's a super flex league or 2 quarterback league. You'd want to go a lot more than that. But at the same time, I think that all the analysis that we just went through still makes sense and still applies.
Yep, for sure. Joe is asking, would you drop? This is a Chase Claypool question. So let's take this in 2 parts here. First, give me your thoughts on Chase Claypool. He had a huge day, 4 tutties on Sunday for your Pittsburgh Steelers. So you have a good read on the situation. Give me the overall read on Chase Claypool, and then I'll talk to you about Joe's question here from YouTube.
All right, so let's take a step back and look at why the Steelers have Chase Claypool in the first place. Why did they spend the draft capital they spent to get him? Obviously, they saw that he was good, and he is good. He's way better than I thought he was going to be. But what they looked at is Juju Smith-Schuster is a free agent next year, and Juju plays the slot almost 2/3 of his snaps from the slot. So slot guys, not something that you really want to invest in. You already have Deontay Johnson, who's proven that he can win on the outside. Chase Claypool could be that guy. They said at the very start of the offseason that they drafted Chase Claypool not to be a move tight end, not to be another Eric Ebron for them, which a lot of people thought that he would make sense playing. Even I did to a degree. But they wanted him to play on the outside, and now he's proven that he can play all over the field. And so what this does is that when Deontay Johnson's healthy, now keep in mind, the last 2 games the Steelers have played, Deontay Johnson has left those games early, and that's allowed Chase Claypool to see more work. And then obviously he's shown his talent because he's on the field more and he's good, and now he's producing at a 36% target share in week 5. But to me, the guy who gets hurt most from this Chase Claypool breakout, everyone's just like, should I drop Deontay? No, don't drop Deontay Johnson. The person who's hurt most is James Washington. Because to start the season, James Washington was the player that Chase Claypool was splitting snaps with. Deontay Johnson was a full-time player. Juju Smith-Schuster, full-time player. But we haven't seen that the last couple of weeks, again, because Deontay's been sidelined. So to me, what this is that, Chase Claypool emerges. I can't imagine, they put this Ferrari back in the garage after we see what Chase Claypool can do, which means that James Washington, once Deontay Johnson is healthy and playing, James Washington's the odd man out whenever they run 11 personnel and we get 3 wide receivers on the field. So with that being said, Chase Claypool to me is someone that you should absolutely go after. But I think that there's going to be sort of a misunderstanding about his role and what he does, et cetera, and what's happened so far. I don't think all of a sudden Claypool is going to see more targets than Deontay Johnson in this offense when Deontay Johnson's healthy. I don't. But I do think that both of those guys, just given the way this offense is rolling right now, I do think that both of those guys can be wide receiver 2s, maybe more low end for Claypool. And while Juju is sort of in this like maybe high end wide receiver 3 range, that's sort of where I'm feeling it out. So I would go hard for Chase Claypool. Like he could be special. I would go nuts with my free agent auction budget this week for Claypool. But that's my read overall and what this sort of looks like. And if you were rostering James Washington for whatever reason, I think this hurts him the most.
Yeah, Juju's getting like Greg Ward like usage from a depth of target perspective, which is grim. The good thing for Claypool, I would say, is that they wanted the ball in his hands. He had 3 rush attempts. We talked about that a lot with Deebo Samuel. When he got rush attempts last year, it meant they wanted the ball in his hands. Yeah. That's valuable. And also Claypool was getting downfield targets. And those are so valuable for fantasy because it gets you points in bunches, as you saw on Sunday. So with that in mind, Joe is asking, would you drop Deebo Samuel, Michael Gallup, or Jerry Jeudy in order to add Chase Claypool this week?
Oh my goodness. This is difficult. So Deebo to me is a buy. They have 2 tough matchups in a row. I think they get the Rams and the Patriots. But Deebo this past week, he hasn't finished higher than wide receiver 60 since he returned from his injury. But this past week, he had like a 23% target share. He saw a snap rate jump up to about 89%. So I still think that good things are ahead for Deebo. And Jerry Jeudy could be pretty good and special too. I don't know. And obviously Courtland Sutton being out, Jeudy could be peppered with targets. Drew Lock coming back soon, hopefully this week. Your boy. So that really leaves us with Michael Gallup. And I think that, Michael Gallup in my 16th transaction on my podcast this week was a hold. But I think this is one of those scenarios where, what are the odds that Gallup not only starts to see a massive uptick in target share where he's been around, that like 14-ish% this year,
He's at 12% for the full
12%,
season.
yeah. So what are the odds that because what's going to happen in Dallas is they're not going to be as pass heavy, right?
They're not going to be as fast either.
Exactly. So Michael Gallup seeing a 12% share on fewer targets overall in that offense is bad. What needs to happen is we need to see what we saw with Andy Dalton in the limited sample, the 11 targets that he threw at the end of that game against the Giants, where Michael Gallup had 3 of those. So that's a good target share. We need Gallup to hit like a 20+% target share probably to be as usable in fantasy football moving forward, I would argue, as Chase Claypool. So I think of those players, Michael Gallup would be the one that I would cut. And it's very, very difficult to say that because I think Gallup is very, very good. It's just that the circumstances aren't in his favor right now.
Right. It's a different situation. In a vacuum, you want to keep Gallup, but in that situation where those are your 4 options, he's probably just ranked 4th. I think that just makes sense where he gets the squeeze there. Francis, tight end premium. Do I drop Logan Thomas for Irv Smith, Dawson Knox, or Darren Fells as a backup tight end? Their main tight end is Hawkinson. So it's a tight end premium, which does incentivize holding 2 tight ends. Irv Smith did see a role change on Monday or Sunday night, ran more routes than he had previously, routes per dropback. For the Vikings, Dawson Knox, good for 2-ish targets per game. Darren Fells probably goes back in the box when Jordan Akins is healthy. Are either or any of those guys intriguing enough for you to drop Logan Thomas with the quarterback situation in flux in Washington?
I don't think. I mean, look, the Irv Smith, of those guys, Irv Smith is probably the most intriguing because of what we saw this past week. This was the biggest discrepancy that we've seen so far this year between Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph, where Irv ran 7 more routes than Rudolph. We haven't seen, I think that Kyle has been running more routes in general, but I think that the biggest discrepancy was only 2 routes so far this season. And then Irv had a 13% target share, which is good to see. He's talented. He's good. We saw that against Seattle. But Logan Thomas has had the peripherals all season long. They've been there all year. They're not disappearing necessarily. It's just that they haven't gotten their quarterback play settled in the offensive line, I would argue too. But because of that, I think that since he's your tight end too, I would just hold on to Logan Thomas and then just keep starting Hawkinson. And then just keep an eye on Irv Smith because, if his role increases, which it should, hypothetically, rational coaching says that they should be using Irv Smith more than they are. But just keep an eye on that because if his role does increase, then he can be usable. Because I do think that there's some room for, a 2B type target behind Justin Jefferson there.
And the efficiency for Logan Thomas is not going to get worse. The volume's been there. The efficiency won't get worse. So you might as well just kind of hold and see what happens if Kyle Allen is healthy for a full game. Andy, that kind of answers your question too. Sounds like we are still good with Logan Thomas. Hopefully not as a starter though. Daniel is asking, is Mike Williams someone you would consider as a waiver pickup this week? It sounds like because Mike Williams is rostered in most leagues already, not being discussed as a waiver pickup. But let's say in Daniel's league, Mike Williams is available. Would you pick him up over Chase Claypool and Travis Fulgham there?
I think that he's in the same bucket as Claypool, I would say.
Yeah, they actually check a lot of the same boxes.
Yeah, they're pretty similar overall, but I would argue that Mike Williams might give you some more stability than what Claypool will. Again, the thing with Claypool, you're buying it. I would say Claypool has the wider range of outcomes between him and Mike Williams because we generally know what kind of player Mike Williams is, and he's an underrated player. And last night when he caught that pass, my initial reaction was like, who are the guys that you want catching a 50-50 ball in this league more than Mike Williams? And my answer was maybe only Kenny Golladay. Like that's probably it. He's just that good at those types of throws. And I think that Justin Herbert and that fit makes so much sense with his arm and the way that he can get the ball down the field. And with no Keenan Allen potentially or that injury that happened, in the first half of that game, that's going to help Mike Williams as well. I think Williams is the safer, if I'm saying right now, like, as a fantasy analyst who doesn't want to have egg on his face, I think saying Mike Williams would be the answer to this question. But I do think that Claypool still has the wider range of outcomes. So it depends on what your team needs are.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We know what Mike Williams' role will be, and there's value in that, but there's also value in volatility, and Claypool has that volatility in a positive sense right now. Chris is asking, as a Dalvin Cook manager without Alexander Mattison, how should I view Mattison in a trade? What type of value should I be willing to give up? I think the thing to consider here is that Dalvin's probably going to miss just one game. He'll probably miss week 6, and then they have a bye in week 7, so if you're looking to add just Mattison for just 1 week in a team where you already have a member of the Vikings backfield, would you give up anything of note there?
No, I wouldn't. So the way that I generally approach handcuffs in fantasy football is that I'll have, I have teams with Alexander Mattison, but they're not teams where I also have Dalvin Cook. Similar to, I have teams that, no, guys, I play in a lot of leagues, which is why I can like sort of treat this as like a portfolio. But I have teams with Kenyon Drake. I have a ton of Chase Edmonds, but they're never on teams with Kenyon Drake. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are. And the main reason for that is I'm really striving and shooting for upside. So when you give a piece away from Alexander Mattison, what you're doing is you're capturing the Vikings backfield, sure, and Madison's going to be an RB1 this week. Like Madison's a top 6 running back probably this week. But what you're doing is you're capturing that backfield. And when Dalvin Cook's back and healthy, you're not going to be playing Alexander Mattison. So the real play is to, obviously you don't need to like go do this and trade for it, but if you have Dalvin Cook, get Chase Edmonds, get Tony Pollard, get these guys that have this upside if something were to happen to their RB1s. And in the short term, I would just try to find guys to just plug in, maybe get maybe Le'Veon Bell gets traded and you can just plug in Frank Gore in there or something. But just get guys who will give you some production, kind of eat it for this week. Hope that Alexander Mattison doesn't do a whole lot. Maybe you lose like 10 fantasy points in difference, but it's not worth actually going and having a transaction and making that trade.
I can guarantee you my body is ready for week 6 when Mike Davis and Alexander Mattison are both top 5 running backs.
It's happening. Oh, yeah.
Bring it on, baby. Darnell Wilson says that he dropped Joshua Kelly to pick up the Bills kicker to prevent the opponent that started Crosby from recovering. He's asking for reassurance. It's a very unique situation. So let's flip this here and talk about Joshua Kelly because last night, Justin Jackson was the ball carrier for the Los Angeles Chargers. Good snap rate. He ran more routes. He looked better. He had 6 targets. how much does this change your view of the Chargers running back situation going forward, knowing that Kelly's role may not be as robust as we once assumed?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm someone who thinks Justin Jackson's really good too. I mentioned that he's your boy, Jim, for those listening, because Jim's a Northwestern guy and Justin Jackson also a Northwestern guy.
I don't actually have any Northwestern stuff on my desk to grab this time,
but
unfortunately.
But Justin Jackson in college had a great production profile. There we go, we got the pen. The great production profile for Justin Jackson. Every time he's been like active and getting work, he's been good. I'm not surprised. But what I thought was going to happen, I think this is the way that I kind of view these situations. What did I think was going to happen entering that game, and then what happened, right? What I thought was going to happen is maybe that running back rush share would be reversed, where it would be more of a 60-40 split in favor of Josh Kelly, and what we saw was it was in favor of Justin Jackson. I'm not shocked at all that Justin Jackson was the guy that was catching passes out of the backfield, because it's not been Josh Kelly's game so far this year. That wasn't his game his final year in college, whereas Justin Jackson can do that. I mentioned that on my podcast, that Justin Jackson would likely be the pass catcher in that team. And then Josh Kelly, when they were at the goal line, he was on the field. So Kelly's going to be the goal line guy. I do think that what they did last night, and every game, it might be a little bit game dependent on how they disperse the rock in terms of rush attempts. But then Justin Jackson's going to probably see a 10 to 18, it's a wide range, but in the teens % target share in that backfield, whereas Josh Kelly's not. So in a PPR league, Justin Jackson's more valuable. It's more valuable in both probably. But I do think Josh Kelly should still be rostered. Don't let that one game sort of skew, what's going to happen without Austin Eckler on this team.
I think the way to view Justin Jackson is very similar to the way you view Devin Singletary, where he's going to get rushes and some targets, but probably not goal line work, and that does dent his profile quite a bit. But that's kind of the realm where I view Justin Jackson. Whereas Joshua Kelly, if you get 10 to 15 carries and chances for touchdowns in season long, there's a lot of value in that. So I would, Darnell, if you can get Joshua Kelly back, I'd probably try to do so.
I really like that. I really like that comp though with Singletary, and then Zach Moss would be Josh Kelly in that case. But the difference,
Zach Moss catches passes.
Yeah, he catches passes. But the other difference too is that Josh Allen takes away some of those goal line looks, whereas Justin Herbert hasn't done that yet. But I think that he might eventually, because he's athletic.
Dude can run. In college, and sometimes that's all he could do. But, that's a different situation. CJ, do I drop Leonard Fournette or Deebo Samuel for Mike Williams? Fournette technically was active on Thursday, but now has had 10 days to get that ankle healthier. So maybe a different role for him. But Ronald Jones looked okay on Thursday for sure. Yeah. Deebo, you mentioned someone you're into. Mike Williams, you're also into. Would you drop one of those guys to add Mike Williams?
I mean, look, I think that if you need wide receiver help, then you can drop Fournette for Williams. But do know that if this is like your bench, I think Fournette is still like a great bench stash, guy who, could eventually emerge in this backfield. Ronald Jones has looked very good on early downs, which has never been in question. The question for Jones has always been his receiving upside. And even in that game against Chicago, Keyshawn Vaughn was on the field on all third downs in hurry up. Then he got rocked at one point in that game, but so I do think that they still have plenty of question marks around Ronald Jones, and what that means is that there's opportunity for other running backs to emerge in that backfield. So I would try to get all three of them on my team. If you need wide receiver help, I can understand dropping Fournette, but I would still try to hold on to Fournette just in case.
And the other thing too is the odds we have confidence and feeling good about Fournette as a starter at times aren't as high. So if you just want like the ease of mind, maybe just go Mike Williams there. Raymond is asking thoughts on Zach Ertz rest of season. Not a drop thanks to brand value. Are we sure? But how low are you selling on Zach Ertz, JJ? Zach Ertz has fewer yards this year than Travis Fulgham had in week 5. So what are your thoughts on Zach Ertz?
Look, guys, I've been wrong about Zach Ertz for the last half decade. Okay. I'm going to victory lap this because I didn't draft Zach Ertz again this year, and finally Zach Ertz has hit the wall. Look, I mean, he's not someone that you can really rely on anymore, right? And the other thing, too, Dallas Goedert's going to come back probably start of November-ish, maybe even late October. And I mean, Goddard was out playing Ertz for the most part to start the season. So that's also a big knock on Ertz moving forward. If you can trade him based on name value, I would do it. And not only that, there's a lot of teams out there in fantasy right now that, are starting guys like Hayden Hurst, which I'm doing in a few leagues. And, there's not very good starting tight ends out there where you might be able to get some value off of the Zach Ertz name. I just don't see it. I think that he's lost it a little bit. He just doesn't look like the same tight end. I mean, he's still falling over every time he catches the ball. There's still no yak there. Yeah. But I'm way more excited about Dallas Goedert, which, by the way, guys, he's available in like 66% of Yahoo leagues right now, or maybe 56%. So I would go out and grab Dallas Goedert right now. Because he should be back, and he was way more effective than Ertz was earlier this year.
Yeah, and Ertz kind of looked banged up getting up after a reception on Sunday. I don't know if that was a new thing, but like it seems like he's playing through injury, and like it's hard to expect that to get a lot better unless he sits for a bit. So I don't really see a lot of reason for hope, especially as they get guys like Deshaun Jackson, like Goddard, like maybe Alshon Jeffrey, another tight end, effectively back in the fold as well. Darnell, thoughts on the New England backfield? James White and Damian Harris. What's your view of them going forward, given what we saw from Damian before their bye week?
I mean, I'm from a role perspective, I would just look at Damian Harris as Sony Michel. So Michel's on short-term IR. I mean, they're all short-term IR, I guess. He's on the 3-week IR. So maybe he comes back in 3 weeks. I don't really know. But I also think that Damian Harris is a better running back than Sony Michel. So Harris could see similar usage to what he saw against Kansas City. Just don't expect them to be as run heavy. And then also remember, Cam Newton's going to be back, and Cam Newton runs the ball a lot too. So, Damian Harris might be like a 10 to 13 carry guy a game with not a lot of receiving volume. Whereas James White has been seeing, he saw a good target share in his game back. Hopefully Cam utilizes him. Again, we didn't have that sample with Cam. So I definitely like James White more than Damian Harris, if that's sort of maybe what you're curious about. Yeah. To me, Harris is more of like a low end flex play.
Okay. Rapid fire here. Thoughts on Kenyon Drake and James Robinson going forward?
James Robinson greater than Kenyon Drake.
Agreed. Drop Dalton Schultz for Austin Hooper?
Yeah, I would do. I love Austin Hooper, man. Yeah,
especially with that downgraded quarterback. Absolutely. Jack is asking Hooper, Schultz, or Jimmy Graham in place of Darren Waller this week. Sorry, the Jimmy Graham name still makes me like visceral react. Sorry,
he's balling out though, man. He's balling out.
I know. 33 yards on Thursday. He's moving up.
Hooper's your guy there. Hooper's your guy.
Is Baker a drop for Dalton?
I would say. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be. I would play Dalton over Baker this week since Baker's got Pittsburgh. So
I would agree. Redbird just said Metcalf ? He's good. We'll say that. Yeah, Jared, good. Would you trade Preston Williams for Damian Harris?
No.
Okay, let's get some from Facebook really quick. Devontae, Tyler Kroft is a steal tonight. Watch. What do you think? Well, Lee Smith is pilfering goal line targets. Devontae, got to account for that. I hate the Bills. They're so frustrating.
They are frustrating.
Goal line. Christopher.
Sure. Yeah, Tyler Kroft, sure.
Why not? Let's party. If Michael Pruitt hadn't gotten COVID, we would have been talking about him instead. Yeah. Since 2 of the 3 wide receivers of the Titans are out tonight, who do we think will be a surprise?
Khalif Raymond?
Yeah, Khalif Raymond with that speed. Why not? Daniel, I have Minshew, Tannehill, and Rodgers. Which 2 should I keep for the rest of the season? Minshew, Tannehill, Rodgers. Who are you dropping there?
I guess Tannehill.
I agree. Or Minshew. I don't know.
Or Minshew. It's close.
Rodgers.
Very close. At least Tannehill has gotten past his bye and all that. I mean, I think it's close. Rodgers is easily the one you would keep, though.
Yes, we can say that for sure. Adolf Gomez is asking, time to drop Matt Ryan?
It depends on what your alternatives are. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's in that QB2 range right now. It's very hard to trust him week in and week out.
Tim, Goddard over Hawkinson or Hooper? How would you rank those 3?
I'd probably go Hawkinson, Goddard, Hooper in terms of what's happening here is you would start Hawkinson until Goddard comes back, which means you don't need Austin Hooper. But I do think that there's the ability to trade if you can get something, because you're going to be able to get more for Hawkinson than Hooper, but I think that their range of outcomes rest of season isn't that far off from one another. So you might be able to trade Hawkinson, keep Hooper, and then pick up Dallas Goedert. That's my next level thinking on that.
I like it. Redbird clarified that the Metcalf thing was for the 50-50 ball discussion. I personally would not want to try to catch a 50-50 ball against DK Metcalf.
Yeah, DK is a good one.
Redbird, we'll take your word for that. I desperately do not want to find out if that's a good
one. DK would be up there too, yeah.
Except it's usually not a 50-50 ball because he's already run past the dude. So,
yeah, exactly.
That helps for sure. Do not forget to get yourself entered for the Week 6 Sunday Million contest. We have a free giveaway going down in the YouTube description. Go to YouTube, check out the description for this stream, and there is a link to enter. All you have to do is enter your email. They'll be doing a drawing for a free Sunday Million ticket later this week. So get yourself entered, get your email entered in there, and try to get yourself a seat in the Sunday Million for this week. JJ, where can people find you and your work right now?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Late Round QB. I have my podcast, the Late Round Podcast, which you can find anywhere podcasts can be found. Just published the 15 transactions call today, too. So definitely check it out over on numberFire.com.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. We are back on Friday to do our snake draft live on air with JJ, Brandon, and myself. That is at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday to get you set for the Week 6 NFL DFS slate. We'll talk to you then. Good luck with your waivers and enjoy Bills-Titans tonight. This has been the Waiver Wire Q&A.